We are Women Talking Football. We're here every Thursday at 2 p.m. breaking down regions across the state of Texas. We divide it into 21 regions here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and today we're focusing on two of them. So Faith obviously talked a ton about the South Plains. We're going to quickly run through the highest ranked teams out of each of the South Plains classifications, and then we'll hit on the Panhandle. You think that those might be the same thing, but there's a lot of miles in between the two of them, so I'll go a little bit more in depth on the Panhandle, but you heard a lot from the South Plains. But let's go ahead and check into this. So starting off, the only 6A program, like she mentioned, is Wolfer Friendship out of District 2. Then you move on down to 5AD1. There are three 5AD1 schools. The one that ranks the highest right now is Lubbock Cooper. They're just outside our rankings in number 23. We only list the top 10 for each classification from 5AD1 down to 1A Division 2 and 6A. It is the top 25, but we do have actual rankings. Our computer ranks them. Those are just not necessarily public, but these are the highest ranked. 5A Division 2 out of the two teams of Lubbock High and Plainview. The Plainview Plainsmen are the highest ranked team. Moving on down to 4A Division 1, you heard Faith talked about it. Lubbock Estacado, the Matadors, under second-year head coach Will Blaylock, have the Ross cousins in Bobby and Cedric. They are off to a hot start there in 4A Division 1. Then 4A Division 2, the only program of which out there in the South Plains is the Levelland Lobos under third-year head coach Lyle Leong. We actually talked to him at coaching school. He came into our interview set and was talking about, hey, it's year 3. They're pumped up. They're ready to go. So they lost to Plainview in week 1, 45-18. Again, that's punching up two separate divisions. So really indicative that they were able to get their offense going. He said that they're excited. Jaden Flores, the receiver, is speedy quick on the outside there for the Lobos. Moving it down into 3A Division 1, the Mustangs of Shallow Water. And this is where the pool of teams start to get a lot larger in these classifications out there in the South Plains. Under third-year head coach Rodney Vincent, Cannon Reed is one heck of a running back and is looking to really lead that hard-hitting Shallow Water offense. Moving down now to 3A Division 2, just outside our top 10 ranking. Childress is ranked 14th right now with the opportunity to continue to climb up. They had a very gutsy 14-7 win in week 1 against Abernathy, which, like Faith mentioned, Abernathy is a really good program. Yep. So that was a really good measuring stick there for Childress under second year with Bo Helm. And then they're real fast. Keep an eye on their quarterback, Scott Smith. He's underrated in my opinion. He's a dual threat that I think can utilize his feet a lot more than people realize. I think when you think Childress, you're used to thinking in the air. Yeah. Keep an eye on the Bobcats. Young?
That was just a
maybe
me question. I was just curious.
I think he might be in his junior year.
Okay.
I believe.
So he's got 2 more years
I think so.
Nice. Okay.
Moving down now to the smallest classifications out there, 2A Division 1. And how about the New Deal Lions? They did suffer a 40-30 loss against Farwell last week. But Matt Hill led his team to the regional semifinals last year. They're playing Idalou this week, and this is a good test because they moved Dallas Sumner over to quarterback this year. So that was his first game in the quarterback position. Seeing how they match up against a historical program in Idalou and seeing how much more experience he has under his belt will be very interesting. 2A Division 2, this is a state-ranked team, the number 5th ranked New Home Leopards, a big 27-6 win over Haskell last week. You'll remember New Home made it all the way to the state semifinals last year before they fell to eventual state champion in the Albany Lions. But New Home last year was a year early. They're still a very young team, but we expect big things to come from the Leopards this season, representing the South Plains well. Moving down now into the 6-man classification. How about that? The number 8th ranked Happy Cowboys. So this was shocking. Happy was ranked a little bit higher, but they took a a big 50-24 loss to Dalton DeGraff and Reed's Klondike squad, which, by the way, Klondike and Jayton play this week. Klondike's
That
number
is
4.
tasty.
The Jayton Jaybergs are number 3. So keep an eye on that in the 6-man ranks if you're looking for a really good 6-man game. Anyway, Stacey Perriman is gonna look to get back with that loss, but they take on Follett. And then finally, the highest rated team in the South Plains in the 1A Division II rankings, and that is the Panthers of Whit Harrell. They suffered a 50-36 loss versus Spring Lake Earth, but they are very large favorite over Cress this week. So looking to get back on track. Whit Harrell is another one of those teams that has an opportunity to bump themselves back up in the rankings after falling to 10th this week. So there you go, the highest ranked team in each classification in the South Plains. Now, let's talk some Panhandle ball.
Panhandle ball.
We are big fans of Panhandle ball, and so is the Falcons of Bushland, as they come in as the highest rated team in 3A Division I in the Panhandle. Let me move my sheet over here, because I'm trying to get this other information. Here we go. So real fast, Panhandle does have 5A Division I programs in Amarillo, Caprock, and Tascosa, a 5A Division II program in Palo Duro, a bunch of Canyon programs with Dumas and Hereford and Pampa in 4A Division I, in 4A Division II, Borger, Canyon West Plains, keep an eye on them, and Perryton. And then our first actually top 10 ranked state team is the Bushland Falcons, coming in at number 7. So I told you to keep an eye on Canyon West Plains. Bushland punched up and beat West Plains last week 47-41. Yeah. It was a high-flying affair, which is no surprise when it comes to Bushland. But Josh Reynolds in his fifth year over there, he's 29 and maybe now 30-8 overall.
Mm-hmm.
He is really something special out there at Bushland. Their quarterback, Dawson Jocko, is one to keep an eye on. He threw for over 3,300 passing yards and 40 touchdowns last year. He's back better than ever. And they have quite a bit returning. 6 returners on defense is going to be a big help, too, for a defense that started off for a little bit of a rocky start last year, but looks to bounce back. And they, oddly enough, perfectly enough, could not have drawn this up better enough, are taking on the number 1 ranked team in 3A Division II in the Canadian Wildcats. They are the Wildcats, right?
Yeah,
I said that,
correct.
and then it didn't sound right.
They are. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay.
Dude, what a high-scoring game this is going to be.
If you like offense.
High-flying offense, baby.
Allow me to put Bushland quarterback Dawson Jaco on one side and Andy Cavalier, Cameron Cavalier, head coach Andy Cavalier, taking over for the Canadian Wildcats this year. Cameron is also a senior quarterback who had over 3,000 passing yards, 1,500 rushing yards, and 67 touchdowns last year. If you like quarterback matchups, please tune in to Bushland and Canadian. This will be very, very interesting. The one thing that I have to say, Bushland obviously a little bit bigger, a little bit more depth, but Canadian is hard hitting. I still have a couple of questions on the Canadian offensive line. They lost a lot to graduation last year. Very interested to see, because we know Cameron can run or throw. He's a very dual threat, but they're going to need to find some protection from him from that Bushland offensive line. So tasty top 10 ranked matchup out there in the Panhandle coming up this Friday. Moving on now to 2A Division I, and it's a name that has been very prevalent out there the past couple of years. The number 8th ranked Stratford Elks, Matt Lavorne and his squad went 11-1 last year, a little uncharacteristic out of the past probably 4 or 5 years. They ended up falling to Cisco in the area round, but they came back in 2023 with a big one, giving a complete shutout to Spearman last week, 37-0. This Elks team, they have really good speed and really good size, but just very, very young, especially on the lines. You'll notice a couple of these teams really young on the lines, a lot of production from the offensive line graduated for a lot of these Panhandle teams last year, but interested to see how those young players end up standing up and getting ready to go here in the start of the 2023 season.
Yeah, and they're looking to come back to AT&T Stadium after a drought last year, but they won back in 2021 against Falls City, I believe. So they're looking to get back there, and this year might be the year to do it because they got the guy that I will talk about in a minute.
Ooh, a nice little lateral tease there. All right, and then wrapping it up down into a Division 2, you have the number 4th ranked team in the Wellington Skyrockets. They got a big shutout against a team out of Oklahoma last week. Greg Profit in his 6th year. They're a team that's looking to punch you in the mouth, as always. Just hard-hitting ball out there. If you need them to beat If they need to beat you with speed, that's going to be a little bit of a tricky opponent to go up against, but they are definitely big and will punch you right back. And then a team that I just cannot get enough of, the 10th ranked Sunray Bobcats. They also had another big win over a team out from Oklahoma. But can we talk about Armando Luan? Are you talking about him later?
I'm not.
Okay, well then let me tell you. I hate to give Tepper credit, but he hopped on the
Who's Tepper?
The Armando Luan bandwagon last year. He led passers in the state. The entire state, regardless of classification, was the leading passer in the state last year. This kid is just special. That air raid attack, they've got 10 starters returning on offense. They have 10 starters returning on defense. So, yeah, and Coach will be Coach Boatnam will be the first person to tell you that experience is going to carry over because Luan's only a junior. He did that as a sophomore last year, and it's funny because almost all of the other skill players were exactly like that, just real young. So that experience that they got making a pretty deep run last year will definitely pay dividends. But Armando Luan, we saw him at 7-on-7, and I was like, oh,
he's special.
Oh, I understand the hype now. So there you go, the highest ranked teams in the Panhandle. Yeet. That's a lot of talking. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it off to Mallory Hartley to do some talking so I can take a sip of my, I'm just going to say it,
community
my Dr.
coffee.
Pepper, my community coffee, and walk us through some of the players to watch out for.
Let's do it. And that's one of the things that I have noticed when going through a lot of these players is that they start off very young in terms of starting on varsity. I mean, there's a lot of these guys that we're talking about today that have started on varsity as freshmen and have just grown in size and now are juniors and seniors at the varsity level and have gained all of this experience. So there's a lot of really talented players that really know their teams very well because they've just started off so young as freshmen. But anyways, let's get into it. Starting at the highest classification, Friendship wide receiver Leighton Stone. He returns for his junior season after recording 1,177 yards and 14 touchdowns last season. That's insane. He's a speedy receiver with great size. He's listed at 6'3", 185 pounds. And in last week's win over Lubbock Coronado, he recorded 8 catches for 136 yards and 3 touchdowns. And along with his speed, he's got great athleticism and excellent hands. He's able to make the play in those really, really tough one-on-one situations. He's got offers from Texas Tech, Baylor, Texas State, and Arizona. I have a feeling that those offers are going to be flying in after during his senior season this year. And this is a team that does like to throw the ball quite a bit. They run the spread, and Stone is a guy that they can rely on in those really, really tough one-on-one battles. Moving right on down to Lubbock Cooper, offensive lineman Holton Hendricks. Probably one of the best players, I would say, in the South Plains region. He's a 4-star offensive lineman who can play at tackle and guard. He recorded 18 pancakes last season. He's a big dude.
I have been talking about Holton Hendricks for the past 3 years. I remember
we talked about him last year on WTF.
We talked about him last year on WTF, and then the year before last, Ariel Schaefer, who was also at KLBK, she had me on to do kind of just a West Texas breakdown for their newscast at one point, and I am so familiar with Holton Hendricks. It's not even funny. He really is. He's talented. He's very talented.
He's 6'3", 275 pounds. He just anchors that offensive line.
He's been that big.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. Like, these guys have been so big since their freshman year, and they just keep getting bigger and better. And he's not only is he big, he's agile and he's consistent with his blocks. He's a really, really fun guy to watch who can play at multiple positions on that offensive line and do really well. He's currently committed to Texas Tech. He did so back in November of 2022, and he chose the Red Raiders over Baylor, Houston, and Kansas. And he's just a good pass blocker for a team that runs the multiple spread offense like Lubbock Cooper. So he's a really, really big guy and good guy to have on the offensive line there. Moving right along to Lubbock Estacado, running back and linebacker Bobby Ross Jr. You already heard Faith talk about him because he was the star, I would say, of week 1 out there in the South Plains. This kid's a certified stud who excels on both sides of the ball. And like Faith said, he's literally only a junior. So he's got 2 full seasons left. Like she said, last week against Midland Greenwood, he had 14 carries for 262 yards and 5 touchdowns. And on the defensive side, 5 tackles and a sack. He's a stud on both sides of the ball. It always amazes me to see. And Lubbock Estacado, granted, they are a 4A program. But at that level, to know the game that well on both sides of the ball is just, it's so impressive to me. It really, really is.
Yeah, he's a man amongst boys playing out there. Will Blaylock was smiling from ear to ear when he saw the production that Bobby Ross could have, and his cousin Zedric's really, really good too. It definitely runs in the family, but Bobby is definitely a name that people need to start recognizing.
Yeah, he's an explosive back. He blasts through holes in the line with his breakaway speed, and he's just genuinely a defense's worst nightmare. He's listed at 6'3", 200 pounds, and 247 Sports has him ranked as a 4-star recruit. He's got offers from all over the state of Texas, actually. North Texas, Texas State, Texas Tech, and UTSA. So I'm interested to see who will land this stud of a player. But he's one of those special talents, and like I said, he's got 2 seasons left. So his numbers are only going to increase as he gains more experience. We've already kind of talked about him a little bit, but let's dive a little bit deeper into him. Canadian quarterback Cameron Cavalier put up absolutely insane numbers last year as only a junior. Passed for 3,069 yards and 31 touchdowns through the air, and he ran for 1,537 yards and 36 touchdowns on the ground. And altogether, if you're wondering, he accounted for 4,600 yards and 67 touchdowns in total. That was his stat line last year. In total.
Easy money.
Easy,
just
right?
Roll out of bed and drop 67 touchdowns.
No, that's simple. How many games did they play last year?
Canadian?
Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's just really impressive for the amount of games that a Texas high school football season holds, right? Mm-hmm. And he's a do-it-all kind of talent for this Canadian offense. He can perform well under pressure when the pocket starts to collapse, and he can just sling it downfield with insane amount of accuracy. And Canadian's a team that likes to rack up the numbers on you with explosive plays, so he fits in their system really, really well. And not to mention, he's got playmakers all around him, too, so that just makes it that much better for him. And finally, let's round this thing all out with, I teased him a little bit earlier, but Stratford quarterback and linebacker Bryce Braden. He's entering his junior season and has played on varsity. He's one of these guys that has played on varsity as a freshman, and he was actually a part of Stratford's state championship win over Falls City back in 2021. He's another guy who puts up big numbers last season on both sides of the ball. He passed for 1,358 yards and 19 touchdowns, and he rushed for 947 yards and 15 touchdowns. And he also recorded 104 total tackles and 4 sacks.
all I got out of that was and that's when you know the stat line's good, when you have to say and 75 times.
And I have to take 3 breaths. It's funny when I have to take a breath after the offensive stats and then go, and here's his defensive stats, right? 104 total tackles. Done. Correct. And 4 sacks last season for Braden. He's rated as a 3-star on 247 Sports, and for a 2A team, that's pretty impressive. And he showed absolutely no mercy last week against Spearman with a 37-0 shutout win. And Braden ran for 75 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and he threw for 94 yards and led the Elks in tackles with 14 and 2 sacks.
And
he's really dang good. And you should keep up with him this season because he's only a junior. So he's got 2 more seasons left with Stratford. And that's what I'm saying. When you've got the guy in Bryce Braden, when you've got the guy at the 2A level, that makes a big amount of difference, especially when they play both sides of the ball like that. He could be the difference between this team making it to 12 wins or making it to, I don't know, second round of playoffs all the way to AT&T Stadium. Like that's how much of an impact that this guy can have on the Elks this season.
Absolutely, yeah. Dave, there's talent. There's talent littered all around both the South Plains and the Panhandle. So there you go. The regional breakdown of the South Plains and Panhandle. We love our friends out in West Texas. And again, thank Faith Douglas for hopping on with us out of KLBK.